today. Make sure you all go ahead, buckle up, because we are about to talk some shh. Well, I don't think that was good enough. All right, I'll try this again. Talk some shh. IT with Glenn and Tony. Take it away, boys.
Thank you, Ange. We had another good bracket tonight
She
from
got
the
to
dads there.
practice some of those. She got to practice some of those breathing techniques to get that shh out.
Get that whole shh out, that's right. Because sometimes you just get a little bit.
Big
But,
inhale.
yep. Big breaths, and then big breath, you can get the whole thing out. What'd you think about the bracket tonight? We definitely had some good cover songs there. I had a
Oh,
lot of favorites on the list.
I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they showed that, covers, new artists can cover a song and bring it new life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that was all about. If any of you out there have ideas on covers and new approach to it, get in touch with our Uncle Dick. He's working on Under the Covers, and let's hear your covers.
Yeah. I've always been a fan of working on covers as well. I think it's a good way to work on the skills. It's a good way to, you can learn something from every cover. Like, oh, I got a little piece of a bass line from this cover, or learn something about a chord progression from another one. It's just all little things you can learn from each of the different, any cover that you do, really, and incorporate them into your own
And you can
style.
actually learn how to songwrite.
Yes.
Just because you're covering something doesn't mean you can't learn how to construct something yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Covering songs teaches you how to make a song, makes you
Exactly.
practice to make a song.
It does. And it gets everybody on the same page. It's something you're all working towards a goal that's already established, where a lot of times if you're all writing a new song, everyone's trying to write a new part, and the parts don't exist yet, so there's nothing really to go back and fall on for the part, and you're just coming up with it from scratch. But having a cover gives you something concrete to start from, and then you can always make it your own from there, but having something to start with is definitely key. I'm a fan of that.
Yeah?
So we got a couple things lined up for today. We've got a few videos to watch and a couple things to look at here. One of them was on the circle of fifths. We talked about that a little bit last week. This was on using a 251.
One of the most important things.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to learn any music theory, it's
Mm-hmm.
one of the most important.
Absolutely. Let me bring this over here and get this started for us here. We should have, I'd say about 5 or 6 videos, but we're going to bounce back and forth, watch a video, talk a little bit about it, go back and forth with a few of them here. This one was from, let's see here. This was from August of 2019, so this came out some time ago, but this was on the page of Steve Bugni, Steve Bugni, and it's about going through the 251s and going down a whole step, covering half of the circle of fifths. And figured we just watch this real quick and make sure that the volume is appropriate and all that. So let's give that a try.
Circle of fifths, starting with A minor. A minor 7. You have your root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th. Going to a D, only one note changes. F sharp and the middle finger. I'm going to go to a G now, which is the 1, and these are the notes. 3rd, 5th, major 7th, and a 9th. Let's keep going. Here's a G minor 7. There's your minor 3rd, 5th, 7th. There's your 9th. Going to C, 13. You're only going to move one finger, just your middle finger. There's your 7th, there's your 9th, there's your 3rd, there's your 13. I'm going to go to an F major, which is the 1 now. The notes for F major 7 are A, C, E, and G. I'm going to make that minor by flatting the 3rd and the 7th. I'm going to do one more. I'll keep going. Alright, right, so that's halfway around the circle of fifths. We go A minor and go on.
You see how simple that approach is.
So I was muted. Good. That's why. Somebody said they couldn't hear me. But yeah, I was saying the fact that you're going from the 2 to the 5 to the 1 and you're trying to focus on economy of motion and trying to use the inversions of the scales or the inversions of the chords that keep things in the same area. So you're only moving one finger to go from the 1 chord to the next chord, from the 2 chord to the 5 chord. You only had to move one finger on the right hand to make that full shift of sound to go from the 2 chord to the 5 chord. So definitely nice for economy of motion.
And using that motion, you really can't fail. Like, the beauty of that is it leads you to notes that will work with where you're coming from.
Yep. Recognizing the patterns of where you are and where you're headed. Definitely. Another one that we had was about, it's from our buddy Jake again, and it's about the secret to sounding sad in major. And this is about the mediant chord.
I saw you setting this up earlier. I can't wait to see this one.
Yeah, it's definitely.
I like Jake.
Absolutely. Secret to sounding sad in major.
I like the approach of emotional adjustments, because it's not just bright and dark.
There are definitely shades of the brightness and the darkness.
Yeah.
Because some things are darker than dark, and some things are brighter than bright, and some things are right in between. It's all about what you're finding.
And that's what those modal shifts help with.
Yep, exactly. And this is about 8 minutes here with Jake from Signals Music Studio. Let's see.
Every day, thousands of musicians struggle to write emotional and melancholy music, but they feel stuck, trapped, thinking that major is just too happy and minor is just too evil. Fortunately, there's the mediant chord. Just one application of the mediant chord can instantly add sorrow and whist to an otherwise cheerful major key. Start a conversation with your music teacher today and ask if the mediant chord is right for you.
I keep getting this question pop up on my comments. How do I get my major chord progressions to sound less cheesy and more emotional? And the secret is you can actually not even leave the major scale and still sound very, very emotional. And I just want to show you 4 or 5 examples in this video of how we can use this 1 to 3 change to get that effect we're looking for. So let's figure out the theory. It's very simple. I'm just going to figure out the D major scale. All right, that's whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, starting on D. And it gives me the notes D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, and D. I give each one of those notes its own chord. I give the first one D major, I give the second one a minor chord, the third one's going to be a minor chord, the fourth one will be major, and the fifth one will be major, the sixth one will be minor, and then the seventh note will get a diminished chord. Now, the secret here we're talking about is going from the 1 chord to the 3 chord. You can hear how sad that is. That's called our mediant chord right there. And I don't hear people talking enough about how depressing of a chord change that is. It is, in my opinion, the saddest chord you can go to in the key of D without leaving the key. I don't think anything else is as sad as going to that F sharp minor. I want to give you an example in the key of D. Hey There Delilah by the Plain White T's. Starts off on a D major and then right away, hey there Delilah, what's it like in New York City? Right to that F sharp minor. And for a song like Hey There Delilah, you're not supposed to feel happy. You know, it's not supposed to, it's also not supposed to be evil. It's just supposed to be this really kind of depressing, dark, morose, damp kind of feeling. And that 1 to 3 change is absolutely perfect right there. Imagine if I had done any of the other minor chords. Imagine if I went from the 1 to the 2 chord. The 2 chord's minor, right? But it's not going to give me that same feeling. If I did, hey there Delilah, what's it like in New York City? That doesn't really work that well. Even if I went to the 6th chord, which is pretty common. Hey there Delilah, what's it like in New York City? It doesn't give me that real tear-jerking, really heartbreaking effect. Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in New York City? And yeah, the melody has something to do with that, but I really think the heart of it is that chord change there, that 1 to the 3, all right? A good example of this being used in the film score department is from the television show Lost, which had a great score through and through. The composer, I think his name was Michael Giacchino, I don't know how to pronounce it, but he wrote a song called Life and Death, and this was the song that would play over the beach scenes during Lost. And it was essentially just a 1 to 3. If I played it on the guitar, it would sound something like this. Subtle, right? I've got B flat major to D minor. But it's very sad. It's got that. Now eventually he makes his way to the 4 chord. And then back to the 1. So there's a lot of emotion going on here. And we're just in bread and butter B flat major here. Nothing fancy. Just really focusing on going from that 1 chord to that 3 chord. I just love that. It's a great sound. Now, I literally stole that exact same chord progression. I mean, almost the same rhythmic cadences and everything. When I had to do film score for myself, I was a musical director for a cartoon here on YouTube called Minecraft the Noob Adventures. And we had a comical death scene, but I wanted to amp up the emotion a little bit for when our character died. His name was Milky Dad. And I ended up using this same chord progression and even changing to that 4 as well to introduce some of that sorrow for our character's final scene.
Oh, it's bad. Here, take this apple.
No, you keep it. I'm cashing in my chips, fellas. I just wanted to apologize for playing you guys like an arcade claw machine.
Now, we can take this a step further. We can get things even darker and depressing by surrounding things with even more minor chords. So if we're really trying to avoid being bright at all, then what we can do is start on our 1 chord and just surround ourselves with as many of the diatonic minor chords as possible. A good example of this is Bruno Mars, It Will Rain. We go from the 1 to the 3, the 1 to the 3, and that gives us that heartbreaking feel. But then we just dump right into the 2 chord, which is sad, and then we go straight to the 6 chord, which is a dark, sad chord. Then back to the 2 chord, and then finally to the 5, I believe. Yeah, the 5, which takes us back to the 1. So I'm going to try and sing over this, but I really want you to follow what these chords are doing and think about how really sad of a chord progression this is, even though we're in bread and butter D major. And really the secret here, in my opinion, is to avoid staying too much on the 4 and the 5 chord, only introduce them when you need, and really focus on that 3 chord. Surrounding yourself with all that minor chords gives you a nice progression. So it sounds like this. If you ever leave me, baby, leave some morphine at my door, 'cause it would take a whole lot of medication to realize what we used to have, we don't have it anymore. Right back there. Pretty cool stuff. I love that chord progression. I wish I could sing like Bruno. The last example I want to give you here today is from the Beatles, A Day in the Life. Once the chord progression starts, I read the news today. And that's our 1 to 3 change. G major, I read the news today, oh boy. Right to our 6 chord. And this song in particular, I think, is a funny example because it really doesn't feel like the key of G major or the key of E minor. It really feels like both of them here. But if we think of ourselves as being in the key of G, then our first change there goes straight to B minor. There's our 3 chord. And then we surround ourselves with another minor chord in the key. It really helps darken things down. Go to our 4 chord for a little optimism. And then right back to our 6 chord. But it's inverted. And then we have our 2 chord. So lots of minor chords in the key of G surrounding us to kind of give us that dark, depressing feel. And I would think that that's a good description for the verses of A Day in the Life. Those are not cheery, those are not optimistic sections, but they're still just the major scale. And that's really what writing music is all about for me, is finding out what emotion do I want you to feel as the listener, and then kind of figuring out how am I going to get that emotion into your head. Am I going to do it through the rhythms? Am I going to do it through the notes I'm playing? Is the chord itself going to convey that emotion to you? Or is it going to be something completely different, the way I'm singing or the way the instruments are being played? But there's a million ways to make the listener feel a certain way. And in my opinion, having this foundational understanding of the basic chords of major is going to take you miles further than any other knowledge, because there's so much emotion wrapped up in those chords. So understanding what each one of those chords does, how does the 4 chord feel? How does the 5 chord feel? Today we just learned how the 3 chord feels. But I recommend you kind of go through this with each one of them and try to know each one of those chords like they're your friend and really know their characteristics. So if you enjoyed this video, and if you enjoy videos like this, please like, subscribe, and check out my Patreon page. I could really use your support on there to continue these lessons going forward.
Yeah. And that was a key point that he makes at the end there about getting the feel for each of the diatonic chords. You know, getting to know that 6 chord, getting to know the 2 chord, getting to know the 3 chord. So many songs are written in 1-4-5 or a 2-6-1-5 or anything like that, but really exploring some of those other things, exploring the 6, exploring the 3, seeing how they feel, seeing what they bring forward to you. You can just find all kinds of new progression stuff to do from there, new song ideas that just come out of that stuff.
Yeah. And where those chords can, you have strategic opportunity to get those moods.
Mm-hmm.
Where those chords are useful.
Mm-hmm. Getting them in there and getting that exact, emotional feel that you're looking for, or sometimes it's even just a way to bridge from this chord to another chord. Like, what you want here and you know what you want there, but you need a way to get there. So sometimes it is just giving you a path, passing through some territory that you might not be as familiar with to get to somewhere more common or somewhere that you have as a destination. Very cool.
Yeah, or to change from a verse where you want one emotion to a chorus where you want the opposite.
Right,
a whispery verse versus a shouting chorus.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is a typical music situation.
You can also invert that and have it be a shouting, thing with a whispering chorus, but it's less common that way. But you can use all those techniques.
Well, I was going to say, if you do that, you really perk my ears. When you do the less common shouting verse, whispery chorus, there's a lot of room there.
Absolutely. A lot of room to work with. A lot of ways to do different things.
And it surprises the listener. If you come in hard and aggressive and then go soft into your chorus, the average listener is going to be surprised with that approach because it's not typical.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, the next one that we have is actually a video about some free VST plugins, and this is mostly for vocals. And it does have just a whole bunch of different resources. It talks about 16 separate plugins, and just looking in the description, it talks about a de-breath, a de-clipper, a de-esser, a de-esser pro, a mouth de-clicker, a noise remover, a plosive remover, a reverb remover.
Very
so there's
useful.
Lots and lots of different things that would clean up very specific vocal situations as VSTs. So I wanted to check this one out. It's a little bit of a longer video, so this one is about 25 minutes. So I just wanted to give you a heads up on that, but we should.
Well, that's so cool that you got this, because I was literally talking about this 2 hours ago, with Greg about de-essers and some of these vocal cleanup effects. They're must-haves.
Absolutely. Now this, I'm not sure if you see this here. This is from Amner Hunter. Is the page?
Oh, he's a new one.
New one. This one I have not looked at before. But when I saw the resources and I saw the way he listed the resources out, I was very interested. So let's see what we have here.
This video, this time around, I want to share with you the news of some free plugins by the company Acusonus. I am talking about the Era Bundle 6, which includes 16 plugins in total. These tools were built to fix all kinds of problems with voiceovers, vocal recordings, etc. It doesn't mean that you cannot use them in some other instruments, but they were built more towards vocal problems. In this video, I want to talk more in depth about why is this happening, why Acusonus is giving away this bundle. I want to talk about the features of these plugins, the controls, what they do, and of course test these tools and fix some problems with the vocal performance. As usual, all of the applicable links are going to be down below in the description and the first comment, and don't forget to check out the timestamps as well that I leave you down below. Before we dive deep into the content, my friends, I would like to invite you to my website amnerhunter.com, where I have some freebies for you. I have some free PDF guides and ebooks for music producers, such as how to create more music in 30 to 60 minutes a day, 8-step mixing guide only using free plugins, also the #1 rule and law, of home recording studios. Additionally, I have some free tools available, a huge collection of guitar impulses, a brand new drum sample pack, among other utilities. And finally, don't forget to check out my blog and this channel, which I'm updating weekly with tons of free content. So now let's get straight to the video. The reason this is happening is because Meta, the parent company of Facebook, Instagram, acquired Acusonus, and now Acusonus is saying goodbye to the plugin development. This is the official announcement here on the website. It says, thanks for your support. Acusonus is embarking on a new adventure, and you can read the frequently asked questions about this. So existing users of Acusonus can continue to use the plugins, of course, but some of these plugins are not gonna be updated and are not gonna receive support, some of them until 2023 only. You have some more information that you can read here on the website. I was skeptical to share this information with you because I don't want to share piracy ever here on this channel. This happened some days ago, and I didn't share this because I was doubtful about this information, all right? But since I started to see some other official websites sharing this information, then I went ahead and created this video for you. If you happen to have an account here at the website and log in, you're gonna notice that under your products, as I entered, you can now download all of the Era bundle in different versions for free, all right? And they don't request any iLok, any serial key or something, any serial number or something. You don't even need to log in to the plugins. You don't need to like activate them or anything. They put all of the plugins on this bundle open for all of the account holders. I went ahead and entered on my account. I downloaded them, installed them, and everything worked perfectly. I also saw some other channels sharing about this information, so I went ahead and created this for you. If you don't happen to have an account here at the website, I am gonna leave you down below the link for Mac and Windows for the installers. Everything will be down below in the description and the first comment as usual. So having said this, let's go and check out the plugins. Let's start here in order with voice changer. So like the name suggests, it changes the voice, adding character to the vocals. Also, it has some cool effects, and also you can add an environment to the recorded vocals. It has a processing knob for each section here, and you have tons of presets. Pretty cool. And you have also general presets here in the quick start menu. You have down here an output level control, very simple to use. Let's check out some examples of different presets of these three different sections.
I should probably I got several volumes that way on this subject. I'm related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject. I'm related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes away.
Next, we move on with the Deep Breath plugin. Very simple.
Let's play a game. What happens when you hire a producer, vocalist, session musician on fire?
Simple to use with just one knob. You have an input control and also an output, and you can listen the difference of what the plugin is doing here Very simple, and this sensitivity knob will allow the plugin to act more aggressive. Let's take a listen.
I should probably just on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. Subject and related.
Next, we move on with the declipper, which this will remove some clipping of the audio, right? When you overuse maybe the input of your microphone in the voice, in the voiceover or vocals maybe, where you are causing a little bit of digital distortion, or you might be overloading the converters. It has two types here, and it has a standard quality and high quality. Also, there is an output control, very simple to use. You can turn off or turn on the plugin right here. Select the type. Here it's gonna be monitoring the processing. Let's take a listen. And the more it starts to distort, 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 and the more it starts to distort. Next, we move on with the de-esser. Very simple to use, only one knob. You have an output control and also a level. Here in this control that says diff, you will hear the difference, meaning that you will listen only what the processing of the plugin is doing. You have two modes, normal and broad, which broad means that it will act more aggressively with the vocals. All right, you just increase this knob and it will start to catch the S's. Let's take a listen.
Maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. Maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. Maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise.
Next, we move on with the de-esser Pro version, a more complex but simpler at the same time plugin for de-essing the vocals or the voice. You have some other additional controls that you don't have in the other version. For instance, you have the focus control, where you are gonna focus on the range of these frequencies that you select here. For instance, from the hertz that you have here all the way up to this amount. And with this knob, you are going to be increasing the processing of the de-esser. You're going to have also the spectrum analyzer here, where you can visualize the frequencies, and you can also shape the de-esser into a more softer de-esser or a more sharp or aggressive de-esser. Also, you can listen to the difference. You have an input and output, and you also have some presets. Let's take a listen.
Maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. In my new disguise. Maybe I should try.
I really like the way that it's actually, when it's processing or when the utility is actually in effect, you see that green on the chart going across there on the waveform, so you can see where it's actually doing its work, and it's very helpful to see where in the vocal line something like a tool like this is very useful.
Yeah,
So
live
that's
feedback.
the good part. Live feedback, exactly. Seeing where, and then as you're dialing it up and dialing it back, you're seeing how much the plugin is actually working, how hard it's working to DS. And if you get it to just that right amount, where it's doing just enough work in just the right places and not any extra work in places it shouldn't be, that's when you get that. And that's where having it looping the way he is also a great idea. Like, you find a section of the song that may be problematic, and you put that on loop, and you start working with the plugin and going back and forth and seeing how you do from there.
And by seeing this, it'll help you to calibrate your mic or anything that's causing these. As you use your mic more and more in this plugin, you'll eventually be able to avoid some of this at the recording level, whether it's a
Absolutely.
filter or pulling back,
And it's as
or
people were saying in
using
the chat, whether it's in the
less
technique
S's.
or a pop filter or talking away from the mic or talking off axis, things like that. There are numerous things that you can do to try to minimize plosives and S's and all that, but at least these tools can take what would otherwise be a perfect vocal track that has just a few minor issues on it, and you can clear those issues out. Whereas normally you would just want to redo the track and get it to where it's just right overall, but this way you can get just those few sticky points cleared up so that the rest of the track sounds much better.
Yeah, and see it real fast as you're listening.
Yeah.
Great plugin.
Very good tools here. Let's get back into it.
Maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. Maybe I should try a little more.
Then let's move on with the mouth declicker. This
The Waves CR8 sampler takes everything exciting about sampling and puts it.
the plugin will remove any mouth clicks or those saliva noises that you make sometimes when you're recording vocals between takes or something. Those very subtle noises that you make with your mouth, clicks and little pops here and there. You have one knob and output control. You can also listen to the difference, meaning the processing of the plugin only without the dry signal, and you have two modes, normal and more broad, for a more aggressive use of the plugin. Let's take a listen. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. 1, 2. Next up, we have the noise remover, which will remove any background noise that you might have, such as hiss or hum, or, for instance, the fan of your computer or something. You can introduce also when cranking the input of your interface or something, you start to bring that noise. This plugin is very simple as well, just one knob and output control. Here you have different types of filters or bands that this plugin will use to remove that noise. Here it will focus on all frequencies, here in high frequencies, low frequencies, high and low frequencies, and mid frequencies only. Let's take a listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then you have the Noise Remover Pro, which has more functionalities and controls, more advanced controls. You have also multi-band processing here. Very interesting because you can only remove the noise of certain bands of the frequency spectrum. You have a master knob to apply the noise remover, and you can change the bands here on this visual interface. The noise will appear in gray, as you are gonna see in a moment. On each band, you have controls turning off that band, listening only what's happening in that band. You can remove the band like this, and you can create one band with this control. You have also some advanced presets for different environments and different applications. So now let's take a listen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Very intuitive interface.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
Yeah, and I
1,
like the fact that you can
2,
see the
3,
noise floor at the
4,
bottom
1.
as it rests at the bottom there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Then we move on with the plosive remover, and like the name suggests, it will remove the consonants that are hitting very hard the microphone, especially if you don't record with a pop filter. For instance, the letter P's and T's that are very strong, sometimes they get to the microphone in a very aggressive way. This plugin is very simple with just one knob to apply the processing, and with two modes, normal and extreme. You can also hear the difference of the signal, meaning the signal processed alone. You have an output control. Let's take a listen here. This is Next up, we move on with the reverb remover. Like
this is your mix in your room.
the name suggests, it will remove any reverberation of the particular room, those fast echoes that happen when you record in a room and there are a lot of reflections, right? This version is very simple with just one knob. It has also an auto makeup gain, because when you remove the reverb, you will lose part of the signal and it will automatically compensate with this control. You can also turn it off in case that you want to do it manually, and you have also different ways that this plugin can focus on the reverb. I added a little bit of plate reverb to this vocal so that you can listen how this plugin removes that effect on the vocals.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide.
Wow.
I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related.
That's very cool.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related.
Next up, we have the more advanced version of this reverb remover. You have also multi-band processing. With this master control, you will also bring down this threshold like in the other plugin to be able to catch the reverb and remove it or reduce it. You have another control here that's called processing response for fast and slow response. You have also the auto makeup gain, and in this plugin you can listen only what the processing is doing to the original signal. You have an input and output control, and you have some presets as well for different applications. Let's take a listen.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide.
Wow, that is awesome.
Auto EQ. As soon
Very
as you
cool.
turn
That
on the
is
plugin
awesome
and
how
put it on
you
your
did
track, it
that.
says this message waiting for audio playback. You need to select an audio region longer than 5 seconds where only one voice is active. Let's enable the plugin and leave it there to analyze the audio.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject.
This is an equalizer that can be used in a very simple way. You can, for instance, add air to the signal or body or clarity to the signal. You have also the intensity control for a more aggressive use of the processing. With this small dot that you have in the center, you can put it depending on what you want to achieve with the vocals. Let's take a listen.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related.
Then we have the voice deepener. This has a relationship with how the vocal was recorded in the sense of how far or close to the microphone was that person. The purpose is to make the sound of the voice more natural, as if it wasn't recorded, as if you have the person in front of you, something like that, in a conversation. It will add also more depth, some bottom end to the signal. It will also change the pitch a bit. That's what I noticed. It has one knob, very simple to use, and two modes, normal and punchy. You have an output control. Let's take a listen.
I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related. I should probably decide. I got several volumes stored away on this subject and related.
Next up, we have the voice leveler. This plugin works.
Let's play a game. What happens when you hire a producer, vocalist, session musician?
As an alternative to the voice writer from Waves Audio, where you have this sort of automatic control that will leave the vocals more consistent. It works as a compressor, but in a more natural way, almost as if you were writing the fader when the vocalist is singing quieter and louder. This is of course very useful because you can sometimes lose some words or phrases if the vocalist is singing very loud in some parts and very quiet. When you insert the plugin, it will let you know if you have some background noise, that you use another plugin to remove the background noise in order for this plugin to work better. So let's ignore this for now. It has only one knob, very simple. The more you increase this knob, the more leveling it causes in the signal. You can also enable the breath control, and you can also enable the emphasis. You have an output control. Let's take a listen in this vocal that, as you can see, it has some very quieter parts and then it has very loud parts. You're gonna notice how this plugin will make the signal more consistent, which ultimately will work better in a song.
Never wow to complicate your life. It's the reassurance of why we'll be alright. Never been so sure why we'll be alright. Never been so sure why we'll be alright. Never been so sure why we'll be alright. Never been so sure. I would never want to complicate your life. It's the reassurance of why we'll be alright.
The last plugin on this list is the Audio Cleanup Assistant, where you can insert different plugins from Acusonus, and you can create this useful signal chain in just one plugin that will ultimately lead you to a better result in your voiceover or vocal recording. You have also some very useful presets for different applications here. You can insert here up to 5 plugins into one. For instance, in these vocals, I have some reverb. I want also control the S's of the signal, and I also want to level some of the quieter and louder parts of this vocal performance. I'm gonna add, for instance, the de-esser here. Then I am gonna add the reverb remover, and lastly I am gonna add the voice leveler. You can experiment, of course, with the order. You have the controls that you would have on the individual plugins here. You can bypass each one of the plugins inside this, and you can also change the order of the signal chain just by dragging and dropping here like this. So let's start here de-essing the vocals, then removing the reverb and leveling the vocals finally.
You'll not believe in my new disguise. Little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. And maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. And maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. And maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise. And maybe I should try a little more. You'll not believe in my new disguise.
Please let me know down below in the comments, my friends, what are your thoughts on these plugins? What are your thoughts on Meta acquiring Acusonus and all of this? And yeah, let me know what you think about the features of these plugins and how they can help you out in your music productions. Before we go, my friends, I would like to invite you to my website, amnorhunter.com, where I have some freebies for you. I have some free PDF guides.
All right. So we've got the free guides there. I mean, there's definitely so many good pieces to that. There's just, I mean, I could really see a lot of good uses for that, and especially the part where you can kind of mix and match all 16 of them into your own custom, 5-step plugin for when you have the common scenarios that you're going to run into, where you need the de-esser, the deplosive, the leveler, the this, the that. You come up with the top 5, build them up into there, and you've got yourself a good preset.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of useful ones in there. amnorhunter.com. I just want to make sure I get that bookmarked.
Yep. Exactly.
That's definitely going to be a go-to. Great set of plugins.
Yeah, and his YouTube channel is amnorhunter as well, so you could find him there. I was not subscribed, but I am now. Because again, I just found him for this one. That was a good find, though. Like I said, that was one that I could see just tons of use for, and it sounds like it was just the right timing on it also, where the Meta acquiring Acusonus just happened. So it's one of those where this is the time to really jump in and get these. It looks like there might not be support going forward, but this would be the time when they are most developed and being released out into the wild. So this would be the time to jump on, really.
Oh, they look like they're already rock solid,
Yep. Absolutely.
Usually support, you need more when you have a new plugin and it needs to be massaged into alpha.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Those look like they're ready to go.
Absolutely. And those, like I said, I have not downloaded those yet, but I saw those and I heard the conversations we were having earlier today about the different ways of massaging vocals and all that, and this was just like the exact right thing at the right time, so I figured we had to jump in on that.
Yeah, that is definitely a vocal utility belt. Like every one of those plugins serves a specialized need in vocal mixing.
Yeah.
I was thinking with that de-reverber, the reverb remover.
Right.
That's an interesting one that I have wished for on many occasions.
We've talked many times about the convoluting reverbs where somebody will record a vocal part and then the reverb that they put on that doesn't match what you have on the rest of the track, but it can be difficult because it's already baked into the track, so you can't get it out of there. This is a perfect solution for that, hopefully.
Yeah, a wet track with reverb that I couldn't remove, at least on vocals. I'm going to give that a shot.
Yeah.
And it seems like it did a good job of actually pulling it back. And, for those singers who want a sharper vocal track, like, when you start adding all these effects and the vocals start to get mushier and mushier.
Right.
Applying something like that on a final lead track and then putting that on top of the affected tracks, you can resharpen a lead.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's what I want to try it with.
Even taking whatever vocal track you have, and this is where the splitting and panning differently and all that, but splitting a track and being able to run different sets of effects on them. Like you could take one and strip it all the way down and just build up the reverb on it, and strip one all the way down and build up just the leveling on that one, and you have different ones that you're doing different things to bring to accent different parts of the performance, as long as they're leveled and as long as they're de-essed and all that kind of thing, as long as none of those issues are there, because that's what this is, like you said, a tool belt to be able to take the issues out of the track and then to massage the track to fit where it should, whether it's a little bit louder, a little bit quieter. That volume fader rider essentially looked awesome, and the fact that when you had the 3 plugins together, you're seeing in each of them how much processing they're doing, how hard they're working essentially to modify the signal. Just very cool. ERA plugin bundle.
Yeah, some of those plugins are doing a lot of work. I'd be curious to see how much resource it takes to do some of the work that does.
Exactly. How machine intensive, how memory intensive, how processor intensive these processes are. But that's always the question. And it's also good to not have a lot of other things running while you're doing this stuff. But again, you should also have a machine that's capable of handling this stuff. And the more you ask of it, the more it's going to.
Yeah, fortunately, my music machine has a lot of RAM and a good CPU.
Yeah, that is always a plus. Now, at this point, I thought maybe we would take a quick music break and play a song that I did with Gary last week. How about that?
What'd you do with Gary?
We did.
Was it with Tennessee or was it with the?
It was with Gary,
the Rocks,
and Rocks Vibes, Antonia, and Elvis, and
Rocks
Patino, and Nurse, yep, and me.
I'm loving what Rocks Vibes is doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Let me get this over here and share that real quick. I figured we'd do that, and then we jump into another of the arpeggio videos. There's one about another guitar video there about arpeggio stuff. But first, we'll take a few minutes and listen to a song. Let me know if that volume's good.
Well, I'm so glad that you wanted to share my life. And I've been happy every day since you became my wife. And I hope that this love will last a long while. 'Cause every day you give me a reason. You give me a reason to smile. Well, I knew you were the one the first time that I saw you. You gave me your phone number and asked me to call you. Now you do everything just the way I like it done. Even when we're doing nothing, baby. Doing nothing, baby. We're having fun. We're having fun.
Give me a reason to smile.
When I think about the things that I do for you, and the many things that you do for me, I hope that our love will last a long while. 'Cause every day you give me a reason. You give me a reason to smile. Well, you do everything the way I like it done. Even when we're doing nothing, we're having fun. As long as we're together, baby, everything's alright. I work hard every day so I can hold you. Oh, baby, I can hold you.
Baby, I can hold you every night.
Every night.
Give me a reason to smile.
Well, I worry about the rest of the guys in the world. They all need special girl and a love that will last them a long while. 'Cause everybody needs a reason. Oh, give them a reason to smile. To smile. Yeah, everybody needs a reason to smile.
And I'll unmute and everything. That song is a good reason to smile.
Oh, and I love how they incorporated the accordion in there.
Some good stuff. We had Nurse, and we had Empatino, we had Elvis Rocks, Antonia Vibes, and me, Glenn Q. So that was a good one. Now we have...
That's an instant classic.
Yeah. I just wanted to sneak in some music there. We also have... this was another one
Gary's-
from Arpeggios.
Gary's an incredible songwriter.
Oh, absolutely.
Really. Like, I'm just constantly impressed with his approach.
Yeah. We've done a good bit of work together over the last year and a half, I'd say. About that time frame. Some good stuff.
And he has an awesome team between you and Antonia and everybody else that he gets to jam with.
Got a deep bench to pull from, that's for sure. Lots of folks on Bad Lab. Now, this one was from a webpage, Fret Jam, the YouTube page. And this is upgrading your improv skills with a vertical arpeggio trick from scales. So this is more for the guitar folks here, but still good to know.
Vertical arpeggio. Is that up and down on the neck, or?
Well, we're going to have to find out. Like a lot of times when they're talking arpeggios, they'll talk lateral arpeggios where they're talking about working their way up and down the neck. But when they're talking vertical, they're talking probably across the strings. But we'll see what they have here because it's a vertical trick for arpeggios. So we'll see if it's talking specifically about that. Let's see how we do.
Arpeggios are one way of expressing a chord quality. In its most basic form, an arpeggio sequence would follow the natural hierarchy of intervals that make up the implied chord, with the triad at the base, followed by the seventh, and then any extensions with which we might wish to colour the chord. This can of course be played as an ascending or descending sequence, and we can begin and end on any tone within that extended sequence. So arpeggios can be thought of as the melodic outline of a chord, as opposed to its collective harmonization. But there's another way of visualizing and approaching arpeggios that helps us to integrate them with our linear or horizontal scale movements, and as a result, give our lead phrases more shape. If you find yourself wandering up and down scale patterns rather aimlessly, like you're trapped in a narrow melodic corridor, this concept will instantly open new doors, give your scale phrasing more directional variation, and take your improvisation skills to new levels. Any 7-tone scale, such as those shown here, can be expressed vertically as an arpeggio, which outlines the scale's native chord quality. And these full 7-tone arpeggios can be fragmented into simpler arpeggios, such as triads, for more accessible phrasing options. To form the basis of our vertical expression of a scale, we can use a technique known as stacking thirds, or jumping in thirds. This is the same as skipping every other tone in the scale's natural sequence. Take Lydian, a commonly used major scale, as an example, though remember that the process we're about to follow applies to any 7-tone scale. Here we have a condensed box pattern starting on A at the 5th fret, which marks the 1st degree of our A Lydian scale. We're now going to move through the scale in intervals of a third, which is the same as skipping a degree from one tone to the next. This will ultimately take us across 2 octaves. Starting on the 1st degree, we can form a major third, minor third, major third, minor, major, minor, and finally another minor third back to the scale's 1st degree. Let's connect these thirds up into a sequence. We've now played through all 7 tones of the scale, but vertically, in arpeggio form. Incidentally, this complete 7-tone arpeggio gives us the native chord quality of this particular scale, major 13, augmented 11, a major triad with a major 7th and a 9th, augmented 11th and 13th as extensions. We could also stack in thirds from the 2nd degree, or starting on the 9th of our arpeggio, the lowest of which we initially skipped over in the first sequence. While this essentially gives us the same 7-tone arpeggio as before, it does offer us higher and lower voicings of certain tones. Here we start on the tonic before moving into the arpeggio from the 2nd degree. In fact, we could begin stacking thirds on any scale degree, and it would simply be a continuation of the full arpeggio stack. This leads us onto our next exercise, connecting the scale's arpeggios to other box patterns up and down the neck, using the same third jumping technique. Gradually, we'll start to flow through these patterns more intuitively and freely, just as we would with regular scale movements. Here's an example of using these box positions to connect up different areas of the neck with the scale's arpeggio. This merging of patterns will inevitably lead us towards creating new patterns that span a wider neck area, such as this one. But the key aim right now is that we can start a scales arpeggio on different degrees and in different neck positions, visually superimposing those stacked third arpeggio patterns onto any scale pattern. This is the basis of creating a vertical expression of the scale at hand. And don't worry, we won't have to learn a completely new arpeggio pattern for every single scale, since Lydian shares the same pattern as 6 other diatonic scales, or the modes of the major scale. More on that later. We're now going to compartmentalize this scale into simpler arpeggio fragments. This is so we can more concisely connect vertical and horizontal movements in our lead phrases. As you may already know, scales can be harmonized using triads. Each 7-tone scale contains 7 triads, again derived from stacking thirds on each degree, and where there's a chord, there's an arpeggio. This means we effectively have access to 7 arpeggios within the scale for our phrasing, each of them representing a fragment of the complete arpeggio from earlier. Back to Lydian's 1st degree pattern. Starting on the 1st degree, we have a major arpeggio. 2nd degree, major. 3rd degree, minor. 4th degree, diminished. 5th degree, major. 6th degree, minor. And 7th degree, minor. We're essentially moving through the scale using a sequence of integrated arpeggios, just as we might when harmonizing it using chords. And just like before, we can play these triad arpeggios in different neck positions, such as this example on the top 2 strings. Or this example on the 3rd and 4th strings. Experiment with connecting these arpeggios in different ways, using both ascending and descending sequences. For example, here we link the major arpeggio from the 1st.
That's when we're going up and down the neck with the 2-string pattern.
Yeah, exactly. Those are the more horizontally stretched out patterns, whereas this way he's talking more about the verticality, like when he was talking originally about the 2-octave arpeggios, where you're going through all the scale degrees, but you're basically jumping, every other, going from 1 up through 13. And in that case, you're going vertically because you're doing the 2 full scales rather than just repeating one arpeggio. Like some people would just do, root 3 5 7 or root 3 5 root whatever, and just repeat the same pattern again for the second octave. But in this case, you're going through every scale degree that's in that scale, which is cool. By doing it that way.
And that's a different kind of guitarist who likes, some guitarists I would imagine like to go the vertical approach because everything's close and accessible, and other guitarists just seem natural jumping up and down the neck.
Yeah, and that's the
The
thing
horizontal approach lets you go really fast.
Understanding both approaches is important because it's really a hybrid approach that works best in any situation, because some situations you're going to want to go more vertically, some cases more horizontally, but a lot of times it's based on the sound you're looking for too, because you can get a very different sound if you stayed on just 2 strings, for example, and you just did melody on those 2 strings. You're more focused on the emotion that you're trying to get out with each note, as opposed to this fancy scale pattern or this shred move or whatever. You're really focused on the sounds you're hearing, on what tones you want to hang out on and on what tones you want to just bypass and skip right past. So you're thinking more musically.
And where you have room for mistake.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The potential for, is it more likely to make mistakes going horizontal or
it's kind of
vertical? I would imagine horizontal would be more mistake prone.
I think it's more about playing beyond your speed when it comes to mistakes. Like normally you should only be playing anything that you can comfortably play at that speed. So there are times you want to push yourself naturally, but like if you were performing something or if you're trying to play something, practice. Exactly. For practicing, you're trying to get faster and faster. And even if you're having trouble building up a song to 100% speed, one way to do it is to and it's a song you're planning on doing live, I would try to push it to even 110% speed while I'm practicing, like very slowly build up, like do it 90%, 95, work my way up, but even go beyond 100%, because sometimes when you're on stage, the adrenaline is kicking in and the drummer's going a little faster than you would think. And if you had pushed yourself to get to just barely be able to play it at 100% and the drummer starts doing 110%, then you fall apart. So it's important to be able to play everything at the speed at which you need to be able to play it. That's another thing about planning out parts or writing out parts that you can't necessarily play on an instrument. Like that's one where some people would say like, oh, I only write stuff that I could ever play live. And that makes sense. But at the same time, like I can't play 7 instruments at once. So I could do an entire song, but it's like I can play that bass part, I can play that guitar part, I can play that guitar part, I can play that keyboard part, I can play that drum part, but I can't
Yeah, if you have to play
one
particular part, like having to play that part, you just want to make sure you can play it. I don't write a keyboard part that I can't play.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like when it comes to mistake prone, it's more about the mistakes are more about trying to play beyond your speed for that phrase that you're trying to do or in that position. Part of the practicing that a lot of people will do is just grinding scales, like while you're watching TV or watching YouTube videos or whatever, you're just going up and down on pentatonics or going through diatonic scale positions on a guitar to build that muscle memory so you don't have to think about it, because while you're just watching something else, you're just sitting there playing through scale positions and getting comfortable with being able to play them at speed and switch from one position to another and all these things. It's quite important. Also being able to play at different areas of the neck, because the frets are much further apart when you're way out on the neck than they are up near the body. So you should move around the neck as well as moving around the fretboard as you're playing, just to get comfortable with all of it. But
well, following this box technique, if you follow this box technique, your claw barely has to change.
Exactly.
You just shift it up or down the neck, but your claw to go vertical, if you follow the box jump, it's so much easier on guitar.
The other bonus is that with the way that's written out here is not only do you have that box pattern where you're seeing the overall vision of that claw, like you mentioned, like this is where you'd be holding your hand to get those particular tones, you're also seeing the tab up top where it's telling you exactly, this fret on this string at this time, and just go right through the example. And as they highlight what note they're playing in the top, they're also highlighting it down in the bottom. So you're getting double reinforcement as to where it is on the neck visually and what it looks like in tab as you're seeing it come across.
Yeah, I absolutely love the visual display. Yeah. Very easy to understand.
And also the fact that it is so well synchronized. Like when he was doing those little shreddy arpeggios a minute ago, like you're seeing every note as he's hitting it, and you can see exactly where it fits in the box pattern and where it is in the tab. Very cool. Let's see what we got now.
Yeah, this is an instant subscribe.
Yep, and absolutely, Chris. Finger size and length have an effect on where someone's best on the neck. I have very large hands, so for me, even out the end of a bass neck is fine. But people with smaller hands, they'll be better off trying to play certain things that require more of a stretch. Those kinds of phrases they would be more interested in doing closer to the body because that's where the frets are closer together. Whereas with me, my hands are so big that if I try to get way up high on the neck, like my fingers are all crushed into this little tiny spot trying to hit, a claw where it's in this little tiny area. Feels like a ukulele when you
That's
get
a
high enough
good
up
tip for people with smaller hands.
there. Absolutely.
So if I have stubby fingers, so if I play on the bottom end higher up in the neck for certain notes, I'm gonna have an easier time. My fingers don't scale like you giants do.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is it depends on what you're playing. Like if you're just doing chords, then like you said, that's a claw. So even the claw all the way out at the end of the neck, like an open G chord, for example, you're not. It's not that difficult even for small hands. But when you start doing, like if you were trying to play in F major, for example, and you wanted to play F major going, with those first three notes are fret 1, 3, and 5. So like that's already a big stretch. Like that's the biggest stretch you're going to have, fret wise is out there at the 1, 3, and 5. But if you're uncomfortable doing the 1, 3, and 5 there, you could slide the whole thing up. If you went up a whole octave, you'd be doing it at 13, 15, and 17, and those would be very close together. So that would be a very comfortable spot to start running those. But those might be too close together, so you could just transpose it and come back down to the 8th fret on the A string, and that's also F, and just play it there instead. So that's where also knowing where your notes are on the neck, like there's an F major scale you can play down here that's way low, and it's very spread apart. And then there's this one in the middle of the neck that's a little bit higher, and then there's this one way up the neck that's even higher. So you can find these different positions to get the same phrases, but the phrases will either be higher or lower in pitch and further or higher on the fretboard depending on what's comfortable for you to play. It's good to know where they all are, though. And we also had a conversation recently about pianos and hand size, and we were talking about, like, I had never even thought of it, but pianos are essentially all the same size.
The distance never changes there.
Yep.
Your stretch on a piano is the same anywhere on the piano.
Yep. And that's the thing is I can stretch from a C and I can hold down the next G. And that's really, too far almost. But like I can comfortably play from a C to the next E, and that's a 10th. And that's like most people would be able to comfortably play an octave and be able to move up and down in an octave, but they would be stretching to try to hit
you're
from
a
C to
mutant.
E. But I'm a mutant, yeah. So like my left hand is even bigger than my right, but it's like I can literally play from the C to the E with both hands comfortably. So it makes for these very open voicings, yeah. Yep, I could play from the C to the E with this hand, and then from the G to the C, for example, in that hand, and cover all that ground, but getting two very spread open chords because you get a very low note, a note in the middle, a note higher in the middle, and a note way high, and that's all just in one blap. Or you can crunch it all together. You can do what they consider crunch chords, where you're trying to put all those same tones, but you're bringing them as close together as you can to get them into a small claw. But again, that's more in the
kind of like a blast.
Yeah. Trying to figure out what works better for the song that you're trying to do, like whether it's a more spaced out chord where you want it to have the lows and the highs and cover all that ground, or whether you want it to just in the most concise space, like you're not trying to use a lot of range on the instrument, but you're just trying to get as much chord information out as you can, and that's where you're trying to get that little crunch chord in one spot and just go blam, and you're hitting like 3 notes in a row and one over here, and it's just a way of making that work there. But stretching exercises is good. Hand exercises are good. The main thing is no matter what you're doing, if it starts to hurt, stop. And you could figure out another way, because people will tell you about proper technique and you should hold your hands like this and your fingers like that. But it really is an individual thing where it's not that just anything works, but anything can work. So it's really, I've seen people who play just phenomenal guitar with no use of their pinky or ring finger on their fretting hand. They just did everything with the 2 fingers. But he was able to play just ridiculous gypsy jazz.
You showed me some who didn't have those fingers.
Yeah, Django Reinhardt, those 2 fingers were immobilized, and he was still able to play these just blazing gypsy jazz lines with just 2 fingers. So it's really, when people tell you the proper fingering and the way to do it, I mean, there are things that you will not be able to play fast. Like if you were trying to do certain metal shred lines, you would need to be able to hit certain, like 1-3-5, 1-3-5, 1-3-5, things like that you wouldn't be able to do as easily with just 2 fingers, because you'd be doing 1-2 and slide and 1-2 and slide, like things like that. But if you really had a need,
and it's not all playing like tied to feeling comfortable as you play it. Like if you're trying to play something and it's uncomfortable for you to play, it's one thing to stretch yourself to get to it, but uncomfortable to play means you shouldn't play it until you get comfortable to play it.
Yeah,
there's a reason for that uncomfortability.
But when it came
whether
to
it's the
keyboards,
challenge or the physical challenge.
yep. When we talked about keyboards a couple of weeks ago, I had told you about a video that I saw where someone was talking about smaller sized keyboards for pianos because again, like it never occurred to me that all pianos are the same size. Like with a guitar, you can get a three-quarter scale guitar. You can get a junior guitar. You can
Yeah,
get
didn't
things
you
that'll
find
work.
a guy who makes mini pianos?
Yeah, a guy who
in
makes
Pennsylvania?
smaller size keyboard in Pennsylvania. Yep, because whatever the standard size is, whatever it is from octave to octave.
Pianos,
I think it's
smaller
8.5
size
maybe.
pianos, that takes work.
Yeah, smaller size piano keyboard. Now, ideally, it would seem like it should be no problem, just because if we take, the main piano as just 88 triggers, and what they're triggering from that standpoint, it should be very easy to make a smaller, scaled down version of where the keys are, just like we have small little electronic keyboards, But in order to get that, if you want full weighted keys, that was the main thing, is the full weighted response of the keys, because there is a big difference between weighted keys and little
And
plastic
actual
chiclet keys.
strings.
Yep.
There's a difference between a synthesizer and a piano with strings.
Yep. Absolutely. And they make differences in the way everything sounds and the way everything feels. But yes, the ergonomics are very important, whether it's keyboard or whether it's guitar. With the guy in Pennsylvania, he, let's say it was normally 8.5 inch. I don't recall the exact scale length, but if it's 8.5 inches from C to C, he was also working with 8 inch and 7.5 inch, so slightly smaller scaled pianos. And he took some people who were very famous pianists, or very accomplished pianists, I should say, who had very small hands, and introduced them to this piano. And the one woman actually broke down crying when she first sat down at it, because she said her hands looked enormous. And when she started to play, she was able to do all these pieces that were very difficult for her normally.
Like she was at home.
And she felt like she'd found her way home, because she was able to play them faster, smoother, and more comfortably because of the less distance to have to jump. And the other question was whether it would badly affect their ability to go back to a regular size keyboard. But the one guy who did the video had...
Yeah, how hard is the translation back and forth?
Yep, so he went and he played the smaller keyboard for a while to get really used to it, really comfortable with it, and then played a concert on a regular size that night, or whatever it was, and had no trouble. He was actually able to play smoother, faster, more comfortably on the full-size piano.
That's the ultimate
after
test.
the small one. Exactly. So it was actually good training for him, and it was similar to what I was saying about the timing. If you work the timing up to 110%, then bringing it back to 100% should be easy. In the same way, you're playing the on a quote-unquote cheating piano, where the piano's a little bit smaller, so you don't have to jump as far. You can get to that note a little bit quicker, as long as you're watching where you're going and you're not automatically muscle memory jumping 2 octaves and landing short or landing long. That's
the muscle memory reprogramming. Being able to change that muscle memory on the fly. Like if you switch between different tuning guitars all the time across every song, you really have to program your brain to shift the muscle memory.
Exactly.
Same
and that's
with
where the more you
different
practice, the
size
better off you
keys.
be. Yep. Because whether you're practicing with different size keys or different size, like for me, going back and forth between the bass to the guitar to the keys, it's a big difference. Like the difference between the stringed instruments and the keys is one shift, but the shift between the bass and the guitar is mainly just in the size, because the neck on the 5-string is much thicker, much wider than the guitar on the 6-string guitar, and there's more space in between the strings. And I tend to play mostly fingerstyle when it comes to the bass, and when I switch to the guitar, I tend to still stay in fingerstyle. But I can use a pick, and do use a pick for certain things on both the bass and the guitar, but I do find myself defaulting to fingerstyle most of the time, just because it's what's most comfortable to me, or it's what I'm most used to. But that's
they're talking about how you hold the guitar too. Well,
yeah,
they're talking about how you hold the guitar. Yeah, can totally make your comfortability and long-term playing.
When I first got a guitar, I was playing it up here. I mean, I literally had it so high up that the strap of the guitar itself was like up in the middle of my chest, so my arm was way up here. And this is not good ergonomics for playing. So after I realized, that should be lower, I realized, well, how low should it be? And I was like, I could get it all the way down to my kneecaps if I want, but that doesn't really help anything. So it's a matter of figuring out where you're comfortable.
Did you feel it out?
I did.
Did you adjust it until it was home?
It mostly came down to where I hold it when I'm sitting down. Because when I'm sitting down, the guitar rests on my leg and it's right here. So this is kind of where I'm comfortable just working with it. And then if I just stand up and it's almost in the same place, that's about in the same spot. But arm length does matter, where I have, again, big hands, very long arms. So I could sling it way down low, and it would probably be even better for me ergonomically. But that would also bring the neck higher. So like as the body goes down,
how does it
then
feel?
The neck is going to come up here, and it's a question of
how does it feel when you're playing it?
Right. Is it more, more tiring in the shoulders or what have you, because it's got to be comfortable all around, whatever you're doing, if you're going to be playing for long periods of time. If you're just getting on stage to knock out a song or two, no big deal. You could do it standing on your head if you want, but it is important to get comfortable if you're going to be.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm gonna readjust my setup sometime in the next couple of weeks, and I'm not sure if I want to set it up for standing or thing. I actually like playing standing up better, but haven't done it as much since the band days. Now sitting down makes sense for 8 hours.
Right.
But I actually feel better when I'm playing standing.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is sometimes it's just a matter of comfort, whether you're more comfortable sitting or standing and what the situation entails. Because sometimes there'll be a piano song where you might be standing up, but it's a very mellow song, so you would be more comfortable sitting down. There's other times where you're sitting down playing a piano song and it's so energetic that you just want to get up and just bang on that thing. And that's perfectly acceptable reasons to hop up or down.
Yeah, Jerry Lee style.
Yeah, absolutely. Great balls of fire. All that good stuff. All right, let's get this,
throw your feet up there too.
Yeah. The old heel on the top of the keyboard action. Now, for me, I don't know if I can stretch quite like that. And plus, I think I'd be hitting the next guy's keyboard down the way because my legs are pretty long too. So that would be a little tricky. But in that case, let's
the whole stage falls over.
Back into the arpeggio vertical tricks. Let's see what we have here. Muted myself about another 8 minutes or so on this one.
First degree, the major arpeggio from the 5th, the minor arpeggio from the 7th, and the major arpeggio from the 2nd degree. The more we learn to move around the scale pattern in this way, the more these arpeggio fragments will jump out. We can now start to merge these arpeggios with more linear scale movements. For example, we could lead an arpeggio into a linear sequence from the scale. Let's start on the tonic major arpeggio and see where it takes us. We're now close to another major arpeggio built on the 2nd degree. Here we lead into and out of the same 2nd degree arpeggio. Now leading into and out of a descending arpeggio built on the 5th degree. And finally leading out of a phrase with an arpeggio built on the 7th degree. Let's now hear the connected sequence in full. The more we practice integrating these arpeggios into our scale movements, the more intuitively we'll be able to set up and serve melodic phrases from the different places the arpeggios take us. One tip here is to become aware of the tones we begin or land on in our phrases. Every tone we might begin or land on in a scale can potentially become the start of 3 related arpeggio sequences, whether ascending or descending from that tone. For example, from the 5th degree, we have the following arpeggio options. So if we found ourselves on the 5th, we technically have 3 options for moving vertically from that tone. For example, another example, this time ascending from the 5th. So the challenge here is to be able to identify which arpeggio is available from each tone in the scale, as we did earlier. Start by building arpeggios on the chord tones of the tonic chord of the scale, root, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. As Lydian is a mode of the major scale, its pattern, and therefore sequence of arpeggios, is the same as 6 other scales. For example, A Lydian uses the same sequence and therefore pattern and positions as the E major scale or E Ionian, F sharp Dorian, G sharp Phrygian, B Mixolydian, C sharp Aeolian, and D sharp Locrian. So we can use the same concept we learn about how modes relate to one another to avoid having to learn a completely new pattern for each one. For example, referencing an A Lydian sequence from earlier, listen to how that exact same sequence with the same integrated arpeggios sounds over F sharp minor in the context of its related Dorian mode. And what was the complete A Lydian arpeggio becomes F sharp Dorian's own native arpeggio, since we're stacking thirds in exactly the same sequence and therefore pattern. Dorian's own native chord and therefore arpeggio is a minor 13, a minor triad with a minor 7th and a 9th, 11th and 13th as extensions. Of course, we can use exactly the same rolling sequence of box positions to connect up Dorian's arpeggios, just as we did with Lydian and would with any other mode of the major scale. Remember that we don't always have to play through the full 6-string pattern. We can break it up into 2, 3 and 4-string fragments. Now, there's one thing to be a little cautious of when applying this stacked thirds concept to Ionian: the natural scale of the tonic chord in a major key. Let's say we were playing A Ionian over the tonic A major. We can stack thirds just as we did with Lydian, but you'll notice that Ionian has a perfect fourth instead of augmented fourth degree. This would effectively make Ionian's native chord and arpeggio a major 13, but with the natural fourth or 11th in the stack. In a melodic context, this tone is considered rather dissonant over major chords with the same root because of how it clashes with the major third one semitone below. So if we play the 11th as part of an arpeggio sequence, we might hear something is a little off. One way to avoid this dissonance is to resolve it down to the major third, so it becomes a passing tone. The same could be applied to Mixolydian, as that too has a perfect fourth or 11th, which clashes with the major third chord. However, if the chord we're playing over has a suspended fourth quality, then the fourth or 11th becomes more naturally harmonious. Here I'm playing over an A suspended ninth chord with various arpeggio fragments taken from Mixolydian. So just be aware that we still have to use our ears to determine if a tone within the arpeggio we use needs to resolve somewhere more stable, i.e. a primary chord tone. While the aim here is not to crowd out our solos with
or down.
By injecting them into our more linear movements, we can give the journey of our lead an additional vertical expression, using wider interval jumps to help shape our phrases and discover the new places that takes us. Start with individual chords and scales to get a feel for this, and then gradually introduce chord changes. In future lessons, I plan to explore individual scales in a vertical manner, including scales like Phrygian dominant and melodic minor. In the meantime, please consider joining my Patreon for additional help with this concept and more, bonus courses such as dynamic arpeggios and chord connections.
Fret Jam. And that was, Fret Jam is the YouTube page for that. Definitely some good stuff.
On my way.
I like the layout. I like the block diagrams, like you'd said. The going back and forth between the tab and the block diagrams, the vision of the neck is very useful to integrate that information. Absolutely.
And easy to understand these days for me. Like I understand everything else with the guitar at this point. Now that's the final frontier.
Yep. And that's the thing is, there's always more to learn when it comes to guitar. The more you learn, the more you realize there is to learn. But at the same time, the more.
Well, and I've wanted to learn to arpeggiate. That way, I've wanted to arpeggiate that way. I just have less inclination on the keyboard with what I'm used to, and on the guitar, I think I can learn to solo, go up and down a scale, find alternate routes.
And a lot of it again is the feel, knowing to pause on this note, to accent that one, to put a bend here, to put a slide there, like all those kinds of things really make the music from the technicalities, where you're just looking at actual scales and actual patterns and actual runs. That's the mathematics of what's going on, but then there's the music aspect, the heart of the whole thing, and that's putting all those ingredients together, but in a very musical way. Yeah.
I want to slide this note in just a way that it sounds sad or happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not in the key or the scale that I want normally for happy, but I want it to just go there for a second.
Yep.
That's what those alternate routes he was talking about along the way, like shifting from here to here, brought it back to a natural sound.
And that's also where the substitutions come in, or doing the chord substitutions, or borrowing chords from other keys, parallel modes, parallel directions, like borrowing chords from the C minor scale when you're playing in C major, things like that. Those kinds of things, unexpected, take you to someplace different, and might be just the spark you're looking for to take you to like a new chorus.
Can take you to a totally different key. Like, oh, we're going to play our chorus in this key. Key changes, you don't see a lot. A lot of songs sound complex, but they don't actually change key or beats per minute.
Sometimes they just modulate.
When you have one song that like does change keys and does change BPM, that's progressive.
Yep. Yeah, I do like to see the ones where they do change things up, and whether it's again changing the style, or whether it's slowing things way down or speeding things way up, you're taking the song to a different place than where it started.
The modal shifts alone, if you're like good enough shifting with the modes, you can play a totally different song 2 bars later.
Absolutely. Now, I did have one other video I wanted to go through here, and another song that I was going to do. For the video, this is actually from Stitch Method Guitar. We've looked at his stuff before. One of my favorite series from him was his In the Mind of Jerry Garcia series. I think we talked about that at one point. Which
he gets in the head of Jerry.
Yeah,
that's a trip.
He goes into the soloing techniques, why he would make the selections that he makes, things like that, and just gets really in depth with how he's coming out. Even going back to the roots of how some of that's coming from a bluegrass place and things like that. There's just so much good stuff.
Is he the one that did like In the Mind of many artists? Or like what would the song be if it was done as a different artist?
We'll see if you.
I remember you showed me one.
Stitch Method Guitar is his website. You see him in his little icon there with the mustache and the full beard. You recognize him when he comes up here. Let's start him off.
It is very common in the jam band world to take a blues song, speed it up a lot, give it some happier lyrics, and have
I like this, dude.
Colorful type of improvised solo on top of it. It's not necessarily the blues, it comes from the blues, but for us guitar players, improvising over it could be frightening because of the speed, and also there's usually so much color. If you're a fan of any jam band, they all have one of these songs. So I'm going to show you how to survive it with the simplest trick, and it works every time. So let's get down to it. Today we're going to be using a backing track of an E blues, okay? It's E, my distortion's on, let's change it. It's an E, and the camera wobbled. E, then A, back to the E, you'll hear the whole thing. And the turnaround here is instead of B, A, E, it's going to go B, G, A, E. You'll hear it. It really doesn't make a huge difference because you're going to be using the E minor pentatonic to start anyway. I just want to show you. All these jam bands put a little bit of twist on it, and this is one of them. So what is this secret that I'm withholding that I should tell you right away? It is very, very simple. It's you want to change the rhythm and make it very, very stark, like stand out. Change your rhythm right before the chord changes. In the 12-bar blues, you have 4 bars of the E. On that last bar, I should say it's the pinky, on the last bar of the E, you're going to change the rhythm rhythm, whatever you were doing, you have to lead into the A. You have 2 bars of A. On that last bar of the A, you're going to change your rhythm starkly, really like make it stand out, so that when you go back to the E, it sounds like you caught on again. And this is how these guitar players keep you kind of listening and like, oh my gosh, this sounds so good. And I'm going to show you how it works after I nick my guitar. All right, so I'm going to keep my tone clean for this one. I'm just going to use my E blues scale, right? Just like wherever you are. I think the easiest one to use right now is just E blues scale. Now, say you can't play too fast. Say you're like, oh, okay, we're playing a blues, it's really fast. You don't have to play fast. As long as you do this, you can kind of keep it sparse and controlled. As long as you change your rhythm right before the chord change, magic will happen. Let me show you. I'm not going to try and solo too fast, but I will change my rhythm. Listen for it. Here we go. So there it was, and I pointed out on the screen what was happening. If you were just listening to that, and you're in your jam band, let's just say you're just using the pentatonic, I'm going to give you different scales to use and show you, you can make it more complex. You already gave the listener something to listen to. That wasn't too complex, but nonetheless it had that color, had that movement that I think I love from these high-speed kind of jam-based blues songs. So let me show you just, if you're past that, let's just say, hey, you know, I use more than just the pentatonic. Great, let me show you that it works with that too. And if you're not here yet, check out my Caged Masterclass, and also check out my Jerry Garcia soloing masterclass. That will help you out tremendously with the sound we're about to get. All right, so what I'm going to do in this case here is I'm going to look at my E chord, my A chord, my B, my G, and my A chord. Those are all the chords that are involved in this song. And I'm going to know those arpeggios, up and down. I'm going to know all of them. Right? And I can do it for all. But more importantly, I'm going to solo with my pentatonic or blues scale. But at any moment, if I'm in any chord, of course, I could, you know, sew together my arpeggios. This is where that Jerry Garcia video comes in, you know, 1, 3, 4, flat 5, 5. You know, it's very common stuff. And so if you watch that video, if you're here, like if you understand that, great. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to say to myself, no matter what I do, as long as I, you know, change that rhythm, as long as I give you something different right for the chord change, all is good. For this time around, I'm going to put on my distortion, and let's see if you can hear the same effect. We're putting more ingredients in the stew, but nonetheless, it's going to sound good and purposeful because of what we're doing. Here we go. Keep them going, and again, I'm keeping it simple, right on the 12th fret, but everything, I just pointed out on the screen, I really wasn't paying attention too much to developing the tension through what notes I was playing. I was developing that tension and movement through the rhythm. If you like this stuff and you want to practice it more, come join me on Patreon. Of course, I'll be doing it all over the fretboard in that E, also probably doing it in A, and giving you just different rhythm ideas on how to do it, from slow rhythms and sparse rhythms to fast rhythms and what I choose. I really hope you enjoyed this kind of shorter video, I think. Use the rhythm. Use the rhythm right before those chord changes. I'll stop talking. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff. That's Stitch Method Guitar. That's his YouTube page there. And just fantastic stuff. Like, I can't recommend highly enough the even just that first one right here, the In the Mind of Jerry Garcia guitar soloing mini masterclass. That's like 28 minutes of pure how to do Jerry. Very useful stuff. Beautiful guitar too.
Which is a science.
It is a science, and the ingredients. And one of the ingredients you just mentioned there, the going from the major third to the 4 to the flat 5 to the 5, just that little, like you were just saying a second ago, that chromatic run right there, where you're going 3, 4, 4.5, 5, and just doing like 1, 3, 4, 4.5, 5, and then moving on up into the rest of the arpeggio, gives you that. It kind of slows it down there. One of the notes is not really in the key, but it works, and it's beautiful. I mean, it works every time. Love that stuff.
It's like a mid-key gear shift.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But it doesn't drop the transmission, which is good. Now, let's see here.
Yeah.
I think I was looking for an invite from earlier. We actually had a rehearsal today, and I was over at Joey's house rehearsing with those guys. So it was Joey and Cheryl and me and Joe on the drums, the 4 of us, and we did I think 3 songs that we put together. And since we did cover songs earlier, I thought maybe, looking at some of the cover songs we did today would be fun. Now, this is just just basically one shot through studio recording. This is with that Tascam that we talked about, the Tascam that has the separate inputs for, I think, up to 20 channels. So we have some good separation, but at the same time, there is still some room bleed through because the drums are mic'd in the room and the vocals are being done in the same room. So there's some bleed through on the tracks, and the leveling hasn't been looked at yet. But just in terms of, here's some fun tracks that we did just today. And in this case, it was just all one shot straight through, and then Joey went back and did a lead line over top. So we had started with just a rhythm guitar. Mm-hmm.
Capturing a live jam is something I'd like to cover one night.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that kind of challenge you have there is like, a great technical challenge for sound reinforcement.
Absolutely. Yep. And in this case, this is it's a private link because this is one that we just got. We haven't published it yet, but you can see, even just looking at the WAV file, there's actually 4 songs in here. The short one, the second song there, that's what is that, White Rabbit. So that's one of the shorter songs, like 2 minutes long. But I just thought it would be nice to go into a little bit of music here, and maybe we close the show out on this. Like, do maybe the first 10 minutes of this, the first 3 songs, and then close it out at that point. What do you think, Tom? Sound good?
Cool. Like it.
Right.
And you can see the mountains in between.
Absolutely. So in this one, I think it was the 4th song. I was basically messing up the bass part in the middle there, but I think the first 3 are all still pretty clean. But let's see how we got it. And this is, again, just a room recording, and we'll see how we got it. And we will see you guys next time. But again, this is going to run out for another 10 minutes or so, and it's always a pleasure.
Oh, and those were awesome examples tonight. I'm on my way to both those sites.
Volume's good on that?
Yep, sounds awesome. This is a room recording?
It's actually the multi-track through the Tascam, but it's just in the studio space. So nothing's isolated or done separately.
Very nice.
I'm gonna take you
Always a fan of that. So that was, again, just 4 of us there, and room recording. Was a second layer on the guitars. So he came back around and did a guitar lead over after doing the guitar rhythm just on the first time around. So a little bit different there. But then we had White Rabbit.
So we added a second track.
Yep. Yeah, we basically just, we have track 11, let's say, set up as a separate guitar track, so that after we finish recording everything on the one, it's just rerouting the input to a second track to do a guitar lead on that. We did the same thing for vocal leads on a different
You're doing
track
them
as
all
well.
to cakewalk?
Yep, straight in the cakewalk, yeah. And then once he's got them all in cakewalk, we make sure we keep it under 15 minutes so he can push it to BandLab so we can look at it here. And then I can, pull it into my cakewalk and look at it on this side. But in the meantime, this is just, like you said,
Now that's a way to utilize your cloud storage.
Yep. Exactly. Now we
You're
do need to do a
putting
better
those
job
recordings
of naming these
in a
files, because
backup.
like naming it today's date and then having 4 songs in it, I recognize. Oh yeah, that's Tickets to Paradise, and that's that one's White Rabbit, and that one's something else. Like, we just need to change the name so that we actually put the song titles in there. But once we do that, then we'll be better off in being able to break them apart. But the main idea here was to get some covers. We always record a couple of songs every time we get together. Sometimes it's new ideas for originals. Sometimes it's some of the covers that we do. In this case, his idea was to get some covers, get them recorded in a good form so that we can then hand out a CD essentially, or go to, to get gigs in places and use a recording like this to basically shop it around. And again,
show
this is
your
just,
sound.
Yeah,
Again,
showing the sound, like,
covers
unprocessed. Yep.
help to show your sound.
Exactly, because it's songs that they're already familiar with, songs that they already know how they go. They can see how we interpret them and do them in our own versions. But yeah, so we also did White Rabbit. I think that was the next one. So let's give that a shot. A little White Rabbit. That one's always fun too. Crowd always gets a kick out of that one.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall in one of your mixing sessions over there one day.
Mm-hmm.
See the inputs on the cakewalk, and because you have a lot of inputs and options there.
Oh yeah.
That must be so fun.
Another thing I can do at one point is take this webcam over there and set it up during a practice and just videotape us at practice. Doing a rehearsal like that, doing some recording, going through some stuff. Because
I'd like to see every mic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See where everything's plugged in. See how everything's going. For the most part, it was originally a separate mixer for the drums, and then brought the drums over just as its own separate entity into one channel. But then once he got that Tascam with the 24 inputs, then we were able to split everything out to its own things. So we have, I think,
He's
6
got a
inputs
lot
for the
more
drums.
mic options.
Exactly. 6 for the drums. We have 4 different vocals in there, but at the same time, like, our vocals are very background. Like, I'm just adding little bits in choruses. Same thing, Joey's doing the same, and Joe on the drums also adding little bits. But it's just the 4 of us. So, I mean, 4 of us doing that, and then, again, the second layer is just that lead guitar on the top. Like, he could do that the first time through, and then the song will just sound a little thinner because it doesn't have the rhythm guitar. But he plays the rhythm guitar with his solo in mind, so that...
He's fattening it up.
He's fattening it up just where he wants it to be, so that when he comes back in with that solo layer, that solo layer builds just perfectly on top of everything that was already there, because he's playing the rhythm that he would want to hear behind himself soloing. So it works out perfectly for that. So we just literally, as soon as
A
we get to
good
the end of
lead
it,
doesn't work without that.
Yep, and we would get to the end of recording, as it is, and then we would go to a playback so that he could start working on the guitar part. And within 2 measures, he's like, no, just start it recording. Just start recording. I'm ready. So we just started it recording and had him do his lead part as just a once through, and then added it together, and we're there. So again, these normally we would do more processing to these, and before we published them and get them all shined up and all that, and leveling and all that. But even just as the form they're in now, which is just
Well, that's nice to hear.
Hearing how it sounds in the room, yeah. That's one of the keys, is that it's not a lot of processing, not a lot of added stuff to it. This is just the instruments getting recorded straight in and trying to keep it as generic as possible, essentially, on that end, just so that we can do all of the effects and adding everything else that we need after the fact. Now, I don't recall what the third song was, but let's find out together. It was so long ago, it was this afternoon.
Waiting at the crossroads forever and a day on a guide to find my soul. I spend all night and day. How much harder can I play? You know I gave my life to rock and roll. Here we go. Mama, baby, please. Said she gone down on her knees. Said you're burning that Mississippi sun. But I'm the only one who's standing here. So mama, don't you have no fear. I'm in the last door. I've already run. Here I go. Take me down. Take me down. Take me down. Won't you take me down? Standing at the crossroads, a dried up pen in hand. Conversation went like this. Tell me your desire, why you pulled me from the fire, and we'll seal the deal with a kiss. Said I wanna raise the dead, find a note that I can tread on my walls, I scroll my guns. Don't care what happens when I die, as long as I'm alive. All I wanna do is rock, rock, rock. Take me down, take
and that was Take Me Down by The Pretty Reckless. And that was the third cover that we did for today. So again, just a little sampling of what we do in the studio there over at Joey's house, Joey and Cheryl's place. So that is where we're going to call it for tonight. So I'm just going to go ahead and start into this next song, and I'll probably kill the stream while it's going. But I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out tonight. And, you know, stop in every night because 9 p.m. we have something going on every night of the week. On Mondays, we have Metal Mondays. And on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have shows that are changing all the time, whether it's Two for Tuesday or Tube for Tuesday, and whether it's Whip It Out Wednesday with Ange. And then Thursday nights, we have You Dad Me at Hello and Talking Shhh I.T with Glenn and Tony, where you are right now. Friday, we have usually Schmorley and Friends. And Saturday, we have the Rumor Mill Motel. And we have the Sounds of the Underground on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we have The Upside of Hurt with Jeremy Hurt, as well as Madam Z, as well as Chris Lipe with some vocal tips. So we've got stuff going every night of the week. So always a pleasure. And thanks everybody for coming out. And we will catch you guys the next time.
Crazy, but that's how it